students, welcome to the class of Business Studies. Myself N.K. Thokral from Edupedia world. Students, today I am going to talk on planning. I am going to start the chapter Planning of Business Studies. Students, you must be knowing what is plan. The word planning is from the word plan. What is plan? A detailed proposal for doing or achieving something. Simple. Or you can say an intention or decision about what one is going to do, and a detailed map or diagram. These sentences I have told you just right now that a detailed proposal for doing or achieving something, and an intention or decision about what one is going to do, and a detailed map or diagram. These are called plan. Now what's the meaning of planning? The process of making plans for something. Planning is a basic function of management which involves formulation of one or more detailed plans to achieve optimum balance of needs or demands with the available resources. Now students, let us have an introduction on planning. Planning is the beginning of the management process. Every manager and all forms of enterprises, it may be a business, may be a government or educational, make plans to turn their dreams into reality. In this rapidly changing environment and globalization, planning is considered as a strategic area of management. Dreams can be turned into reality only if business managers think in advance on what to do and how to do it. This is the essence of planning. Planning is required in all the spheres of life. Without planning, you may not achieve the goals, or you may not have the same results which in your mind. So planning is one of the most important project management and time management techniques. Planning is preparing a sequence of action steps to achieve some specific goal. If you do it effectively, you can reduce much the necessary time and effort of achieving the goal. So I told you what is a plan. A plan is like a map. When following a plan, you can always see how much you have progressed towards your project goal and how far are you from destination. Essential for making good decisions or where to go or what to do next. One more reason why you need planning is again the 80-20 rule. It is well established that for unstructured activities, 80% of the effort give less than 20% of the valuable outcome. You either spend much time on deciding what to do next, or you are taking many unnecessary, unfocused and inefficient steps. One more thing I would like to tell you that planning is also crucial for meeting your needs during each action steps with your time, money or other resources. With careful planning, you often can see if at some point you are likely to face a problem. It is much easier to adjust your plan to avoid or smoothen a coming crisis rather than to deal with the crisis when it comes unexpected. Let's take an example. Planning for studies. If a student who wants to score good marks in the examination has to plan his study, he needs to decide how much time he has to devote for different subjects, on which topic to lay greater stress and so on. In other words, one has to decide the course of action in order to get good marks. That's why the planning is required. Now after having the introduction on planning, now let us see what is the meaning of planning. Let me tell you what is the definition of planning. As you can see in the slide, process of setting objectives for a given time period, formulating various courses of action to achieve them, and then selecting the best possible alternative from among the various courses of action available. So now you must understand that what is planning? It is a process of setting objectives. You must have objectives in your mind. Only then you can start with the planning process. And time period is with you. And further, what courses of action, what are the alternatives are available with you. And then you can select the best possible alternative so that you can achieve your goal. I may also tell you that planning is deciding in the present what is to be done in future. It involves anticipation of future course of events and deciding the best course of action. Thus, I can tell you that, or I can say it is basically a process of thinking before doing. Again, I'm repeating, thinking before doing. It bridges the gap between where we are and where we want to go. Further, I may tell you about the planning, that planning is a choice-making activity as it involves selecting the best alternative out of various available options. You have the options and you have to select it, and it involves setting up of objectives and deciding the appropriate course of action to achieve with the same objective. Plans are always developed for a given time frame. Mind it, time is with you. Only then within the best possible course of action and the time availability you have to plan the things. If time factor is not taken into consideration, conditions in the environment may change and all businesses plans may go waste. So that's why the planning is a very important basic object of management. Let's go ahead, students. Let's see what are the features of planning. As you can see in the slide, number one feature is a primary function of management. Primary function. Planning lays down the base for other functions of management. Every manager is required to plan before performing any other function of management. Thus, planning precedes other functions and it is also referred to as a primacy of planning. Why we call planning as a primary function? Planning is the first important function as the other functions are organizing, staffing, directing and controlling, which comes later on. In the absence of planning, no other function of management can be performed. So it's very important. That's why I'm telling you, it's the essence of management. In the absence of planning, no other function of management can be performed. This is the base of other functions of management. For example, a company plans to achieve a sales target of 112 crores a year. In order to achieve this target, the second function of management, that is organizing, comes into operation. Under it, the purchase, sales, production and financial activities are decided upon. In order to complete these activities, different departments and positions are decided upon. The authority and responsibility of every position are also decided upon. So after the work of organizing, information about the number of different people at different level required to achieve the objective shall have to be performed. Similar planning is the base of other functions like directing and controlling. Next feature of planning is focuses on achieving objectives. Planning always focuses on achieving objectives. Planning is goal oriented. That is, the purpose of planning is to develop and facilitate accomplishment of organizational objectives. Objectives provide the basic guidelines for planning activities. Management begins with planning and planning begins with the determination of objectives. In the absence of objectives, no organization can ever be thought about. With the determination or with the determining of the objective, the way to achieve the objective is decided in the planning. Planning has no meaning unless it positively contributes for achieving our predetermined goals. Next feature of planning is pervasive. Planning is pervasive. Since the job of planning is performed by the managers at different levels working in the enterprise, it is appropriate to call it all pervasive. Planning is an important function of every manager. He may be a managing director of the organization or may be a foreman in a factory. Any level. The time spent by the higher level managers in the process of planning is comparatively more than the time spent by the middle level and low level managers. It is therefore clear that all the managers working in the enterprise have to plan their activities. Let's take an example. Top management undertakes strategic planning and middle and lower management are involved in departmental planning and operational planning respectively. Next feature of planning is continuous. Planning is a continuous process. Why is it so? Plans are prepared for a particular period, hence there is a need for new plan after the expiry of that period. That's why we call planning is a continuous process. In case of any discrepancy, plans are to be revised. In case of rapid changes in the business environment, plans are to be revised. Continuity of planning is related with the planning cycle. It means that a plan is framed, it is implemented and is followed by another plan and so on. Next feature of planning is futuristic. Planning is always futuristic. Planning decides a plan of action, what is to be done, how is it to be done, and when is it to be done, by whom is it to be done. All these questions are related to future. Under planning, answers to these questions are found out. While an effort is made to find out these answers, the possibility of social, economic, technical, and changes in legal framework are kept in mind. Since planning is concerned with future activities, it is called futuristic. Let's take an example. A company is planning to market a new product. While doing so, it shall have to keep in mind the customs and the interest, taste of the people, and also the possibility of any change in them. Next feature of planning is it involves decision making. So planning involves decision making. Planning becomes a necessity when there are many alternatives to do a job. A planner chooses the most appropriate alternative. Therefore, it can be asserted or it can be said that planning is a process of selecting the best and rejecting the inappropriate. It is therefore observed that planning involves decision making. Let's take an example. So, Mr. A lives in a town where only commerce stream is taught in schools. His daughter has passed matrix and wants to get admission to 10+1. It is evident that there is only one option for her, that is commerce. She doesn't have to think or plan anything. On the other hand, if all the three faculties, art, science and commerce, were available in the school, she would have to definitely think and plan about the subject of study. It would have been nothing but decision making in this case. So that's why we say it's about decision making. Next feature is planning is a mental exercise. Planning is known as a mental exercise as it is related to thinking before doing something. A planner has mainly to think about the following questions: what to do, how to do, when to do, and who is to do. That's why we say it is a mental exercise. Further, I can say that planning requires application of mind involving foresight, intelligent imagination, and sound judgment. So planning is an intellectual activity of thinking rather than doing, as it determines the action to be taken. Planning requires logical and systematic thinking instead of guesswork. That's why we say it is a mental exercise. So students, these are the features of planning. I may repeat it. A primary function of management focuses on achieving objectives. Pervasive, it is a continuous process. It's a futuristic process, involves decision making, and it is a mental exercise. So let's go ahead, students. Now, after having features of planning, let's see why the planning is important. What is the importance of planning? Number one point is planning provides directions. So planning ensures that the goals or objectives are clearly stated so that they act as a guide for deciding the future course of action and directs all the activities for accomplishing the objectives. Departments and individuals in the organizations are able to work in coordination. In the absence of planning, employees would be working in different directions and the organization would not be able to achieve its desired goal. Second point of importance is planning reduces risks of uncertainty. Planning enables a manager to look ahead and anticipate changes and prepare for the risks by making necessary provisions. Planning makes an earnest attempt to make uncertain future events certain to certain extent. So that's why we say that it reduces the risk of uncertainty. Next point of importance is planning reduces overlapping and wasteful activities. Planning coordinates the efforts of different divisions, departments, and individuals. Planning ensures clarity in thought and action, and work is carried on smoothly without interruptions. It helps in avoiding confusion, misunderstanding, and minimizing useless activities. So planning also makes it easier to detect inefficiencies and take corrective measures to deal with them. Another point is, you can see in the slide, planning promotes innovative ideas. While planning, many new ideas arise and it results into creative, innovative, and force attitude among the managers. Planning promotes innovative and creative ideas which can take the shape of concrete plans. Planning is the most challenging activity for the management as it guides all future actions leading to growth and prosperity of the business. Let's take an example on this, and I can tell you that if suppose a businessman has to launch a new product, how it's creative. The many new ideas will emerge one after the another. By doing so, the businessman will become habituated to them. He will always be thinking about doing something new and creative. It is a happy situation for a company which is born through the medium of planning. Next point of importance of planning is planning facilitates decision making. How is it that? Decision making means the process of taking decisions. Under it, a variety of alternatives are discovered and the best alternative is chosen. The planning sets the target for decision making. It also lays down the criteria for evaluating course of action. In this way, planning facilitates decision making. Another point is planning establishes standards for controlling. By determining the objectives of the organization through planning, all the people working in the organization and all the departments are informed about when, what, and how to do things. Standards are laid down about the work, time, and cost. Under controlling, at the time of completing the work, the actual work is done is compared with the standard work and deviations are found out. And if the work has not been done as desired, the person concerned are held responsible. Let's take an example. Suppose a laborer is to do 10 units of work in a day, but actually he completes 8 units. Thus, there is a negative deviation of 2 units. For this, he is held responsible. So, this is why we say planning always establishes standards for controlling. In the absence of plans, a manager will have no standards for controlling the actual performance. In short, planning provides the basis of control. That is, controlling is not possible without planning. So students, these are the points of importance of planning, and I think I must tell you the limitation of planning also. Everything, or it may be a planning, it may be organizing, it may be staffing, the advantages also and limitations also. Now here we are talking of planning. Let's talk about the limitation of planning. Number one limitation is leads to rigidity. In an organization, plans are drawn up with specific goals to be achieved within a specific time frame. It tends to bring rigidity in the methods of work as employees are required to strictly follow the predetermined policies. Managers need to be given some flexibility to cope up with changed circumstances because following a pre-decided plan in case of change in circumstances may not be there in the interest of the organization. That's why we say it leads to rigidity. Another limitation is may not work in a dynamic environment. The business environment is dynamic. Everybody knows plans have to operate in an external environment which is beyond the control of the organization. The organization has to constantly adapt itself to changing. Planning does not provide positive results when such changes are not accurately forecasted. For example, it is very difficult to make accurate forecast about economic conditions, government policies, human behavior, or natural calamities. That's why we say that planning may not work in a dynamic environment. Next limitation of planning is it reduces creativity. With the planning, the managers of the organization starts working rigidly and they become the blind followers of the plan only. The managers do not take any initiative to make changes in the plan according to the changes prevailing in the business environment. They stop giving suggestions and new ideas to bring improvement into working because the guidelines for working are given in planning only. That's why we say it reduces creativity. Next is huge costs. Planning involves huge cost. Planning is an expensive process as a lot of money is spent on gathering and analyzing information and evaluation of various alternatives. Detailed plans require scientific calculation to ascertain facts and figures. Planning also involves number of incidental costs like expenses on boardroom meetings, discussions with professional experts, and preliminary investigation to find out the viability of the plan. If costs incurred on planning do not justify the benefit derived by it, then planning should be avoided, especially in case of firms with shortage of funds. Next limitation is time-consuming process. Next limitation of planning is time-consuming process. Planning process is a time-consuming process because it takes long time to evaluate the alternatives and select the best one. Lot of time is needed in developing planning premises. So because of this, the action gets delayed. And whenever there is a need for prompt and immediate decision, then we have to avoid planning. For example, planning becomes a difficult exercise during sudden and unexpected emergencies which requires immediate decisions. Another limitation is does not guarantee success. The success of an enterprise is possible only when plans are properly drawn up and implemented. It means plans need to be translated into action, otherwise they become meaningless. Mind it, they become meaningless. Managers have a tendency to rely on previously tried and tested plans. However, it is not necessary that a plan which has worked before will work again in the changed and competitive environment. This kind of false sense of security may actually lead to failure instead of success. So we can see here that mere planning does not ensure success, rather efforts have to be made for it. So these are the limitations of planning internally. Now let's talk about the limitations which are external. External forces, external factors are also there which create a hurdle in planning. So number one is natural calamities. Natural calamities such as flood, earthquake, famine, etc. may result in failure of plan. Another one is change in government policies. This government policies exercise a significant influence on business activities. Managers have no control over these policies. For example, change in industrial policy, taxation policy, bank rate, etc. may make the plans ineffective. Another limitation external is strategy of competitors. Competitors may change their strategies, which leads to failure of a firm's plans. For example, introduction of an improved model of an existing product by the competitor may make our plans useless. This is the external factor. Another is technological changes. Sometimes the introduction of new technologies may also lead to failure of plans for product using old technology. Another one is changes in fashion, taste, etc. Sometimes plans may fail when taste, fashion or trend in market goes against the expectation of planners. So unexpected changes in the fashion, taste and preferences of consumers may affect the sales forecast of a firm. So these are all limitations of planning. So students, we have discussed the importance of planning also and limitations of planning. How we can conclude? I can tell you that the given limitations of planning indicate the complexities and problems involved in the planning process. However, they do not limit the importance of planning. Recognition of these limitations will help the managers in more careful and systematic planning. So we can say that planning is a must in all type of businesses, whether it is a commercial or non-commercial. So let's wind up today for the class, students, and next chapter we will proceed in steps in planning process. Okay, bye bye, thank you.